going on, everybody? Welcome to the Hustling Sideways podcast. I'm Alan Halas. I'm a music writer,
And I'm Jim Love, and I'm a keynote and motivational speaker.
and you are a Marquette enthusiast today. Look at that. You're
Apparently,
decked out.
I'm at home and I'm comfortable. By the way, you want to play a quick game? It's called Guess What's on Jim's Desk today. And
Ooh,
I just realized I'm going to show you two things. So let's start off with like not as crazy. We have Sour Patch Kids here, so
okay.
that's one of them. Let's go
That'll
with
get you through a podcast.
a little more personal. We have Pepto Bismol on,
Ooh.
on Jim's desk, and that, my friends, is called being 34 and having a stomach ache. So
I was gonna say
that's where we
that
stand.
that I feel like might be related to the Marquette game this past
Oh,
weekend.
it could be a little heartburn. Yeah, yeah, a little something. You know what, Alan? I don't even basketball season hasn't even started. The Bears are 7-3, and
Yeah,
we're good to go, man. We're
There you
set.
go.
There you
They
go.
say that now. Yeah. Say that now. We'll
I
see
know.
how
I'm
that
going to
turns
come to
out.
regret it, and it's going to be great. But just bear with me as I do it. But we're here. We're happy. We're excited. It's a Monday night here in beautiful Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And actually, our next guest is not from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He's
I was
out in
gonna say,
Illinois. Yeah,
yeah.
and a gentleman who I actually just got connected with recently, and excited to talk a little bit about that and some of the messages that we share. But we have Joe Bush. Joe is a lot of things: an educator, a life coach, a speaker, and a founder of Joe Bush Coaching. So, Joe, welcome to our show.
Welcome.
thank you
Yes.
guys. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Joe, tell us about you, where you're from, a bit of your background, and just walk us through a little bit of that career journey of where you're at now.
All right. So I am born and raised in Elk Grove Village, Illinois. So I actually teach at Elk Grove High School as well. I did not attend high school there. I went to Catholic school, but then I found my way back to town to teach there. The youngest of seven kids, so I was the baby, and I'm the only teacher in the family. But then after me, and my wife is also a teacher, I think we have three or four nieces and nephews that are in the education field. So I think, I don't know if they just like the summers off and they're like, wow, look at Uncle Joe and Aunt Becky. Like they seem to be loving life. Yeah, so I've been teaching this is the 25th year teaching, 23 at Elk Grove. And, pretty much the last 10 years, I've been focused a lot on leadership development. I have a class called Leadership Through Service that we teach at the high school. And that is sort of parlayed into public speaking and some life coaching on the side. I felt like I was doing that work while I was teaching. And so it was something that I just wanted to do more of on the side. And so, yeah, I spoke with the Illinois Human Performance Project, and Jim, that's how we got connected. And we spoke the other day. And, I think there's going to be some connections that we continue to make with one another and maybe speak at the same places, the same crowd. So I'm excited to learn more about what you guys do and
Yeah,
tell
man,
my story.
that's
Yeah.
great. Well, you said the word parlayed, and Alan's eyes got wide
I
because
just
he's thinking about
immediately, yeah, I don't
his
know
next
why.
parlay.
I don't know. Yeah.
This is now a gambling podcast, so no, we're
Oh,
good.
good. All right. Perfect.
Yeah, right.
Perfect.
That's
This is
right.
this is where like FanDuel has to like throw like 70 ads like right in the
That's
middle
right.
of.
So
Um,
Joe, tell me about 25 years of teaching. What is the difference between year one and year 25 in terms of your students and just some of the things that they're, I'm thinking, I mean, that's what is that, the late 90s, right? And now coming into, 2000, 2025, what have you
Yeah.
seen and not even from a leadership development standpoint, but just like students being engaged or what ways have they changed? And it's been immense. So I'm curious your perspective on
Yeah. So teaching wise, I mean, they say kids are kids, and that's kind of true, but it's
it.
also not because there are huge changes that are taking place in education. And when I started, it was chalkboards, and we were kind of trying to get whiteboards, and maybe you could uh, rent one of those televisions from the AV center where you could put a couple PowerPoint slides up. And so now everything is shifted completely into the world of technology, as you know. I think what's different is, and it's a blessing and a curse, because when I first started teaching, at the end of a test, when kids were done, you would spend 10 minutes, guys, quiet down. People are still testing. People are still testing. Now it's a library. Nobody talks because they're just on their phone, they're on their device once the test is finished. And so
wow.
I'm longing a little bit for the human connection of students. And I don't know, maybe I shouldn't wish that upon myself, but my first year, I mean, there were some goofy, silly, really fun kids. And I think I don't get to know the students as well as easy as I did back then. You know, the personalities just came out day one, whereas now you really have to draw it in. And with the leadership class, we spent a lot of time with one-on-one meetings and connections and better questions, but it takes a lot more to know what, Susie in the corner is all about.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I can only think that I was the last like high school class at my high school that didn't get like an issued laptop to them. And at the time it was
Oh,
like an IBM ThinkPad. And like it was, monitored to the hills, and we didn't really have a smartphone yet. Like it was before that. Wow, I'm really sounding old the more every sentence that I say here.
yeah.
Um,
Post
but like
depression.
you said, it is wild to think that, we had teachers that were like, don't even bring that phone in here, leave it in your locker. And that was
Right.
before it was a smartphone, right? Like that was
Yeah.
before it even had those capabilities. And now it's like, as soon as the test is done, they could be, doing any number of things, whatever they're doing on their phones, probably
Right.
communicating with each other still too, but just in an entirely different way. That is fascinating and a little bit jarring for me, like to even think about.
Yeah. And even with my own, I have two boys, they're 16 and 13. And, so I graduated high school in 1997 and, grammar school in 1993. And I remember, I felt like we had sleepovers all the time. Like we were always at each other's house. We were always riding our bikes. And now kids are just connected virtually. So my son is having 37 conversations right now without saying a word, which is very
Hmm.
different. And so getting to know their friends, it's like, well, who's this guy that you're hanging out with, and who are his
Yeah.
parents? I think growing up when you rode your bike, and there were a lot of more stay at home parents back then, or you had a house phone, and so you called and you had to deal with talking to Mr. and Mrs. Smith before you got to talk to their son and daughter. So I
Yeah.
think that those connections are a lot different now.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, I mean, that's another one that makes me feel pretty old, but also that notion of like now it's so rare to just see like a group of kids walking down the street together or like hanging out
Yeah,
together. Like if you drive,
right.
like there used to be kids hanging on every corner, and now there's
Yeah.
not. But enough of me feeling old.
Old man
Yeah.
yells at cloud. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. I'm two steps away from telling someone to get off my lawn, but they're not on the
Yeah.
lawn in the first place. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, I do want to talk about kind of your background in teaching and speaking, because it strikes me as somebody that you were very outgoing, probably growing up, or am I reaching on that?
No, yeah, I was probably the kid that the teachers wish I had a smartphone, even though they didn't know exist. So I would shut up because, yeah, I was the idiot after the test that wouldn't stop talking, and I think a lot of that comes from being the youngest of seven, just trying to have a voice, and I wasn't strong enough to defend myself, but they would like push me around and stuff, so I had to have quick witted responses, and that was just a natural thing, and I was drawn to stand up comedy early on. I've up until the last couple of years, I watched every episode of Saturday Night Live, and so I've been drawn to characters and drawn to speakers. It always just impressed me, and I can listen to a speech and almost recite it back to you and remember so many of the things if it's a good
Yeah.
speaker versus reading a book or watching a movie
Yeah.
or something like that.
And when does that progress, Joe, from being like I'm really interested in this to I want to do that thing? Like when do you start getting the itch to actually go speak for you and the message you want to deliver?
So it was interesting. I had a student. I gave kind of like an end of the year speech, and it was
Mm.
probably the first thing that I actually put together and was like really conscious of like word choice. And it was a freshman. I'll never forget this kid, Adam O'Malley. And he's like, Mr. Bush, you ever thought about being a speaker? And just that right there, I was like, no, yeah, I guess I have a little bit. I've seen some great speakers, I've done it. And then we did a District 214 where I teach. We did a leadership conference, and every school had to put on a side room, and so I did a 20-minute thing, and people were like, "That was really good. Can you do it at this place?" And I did it at this place, and I remember I was speaking at the Illinois Director of Student Activities conference, and I hit a home run with the speech. It was just like everything flew perfectly, or flew, yeah, flown, was flowing perfectly,
That works.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and it's talking about speaking, and I can't speak. And I remember somebody came up to me and said, "Can you come to our school to speak?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, that'd be great." And then she said, "Well, what do you charge?" And I was like, Oh, well, this is I don't know, and I remember I was coming off of, the John Maxwell Leadership Conference, and he was talking about he was charging $40,000. So I wasn't quite there yet. And going to a public school, and I was like, $250 seems fair. It seems like it would take me, an hour to drive there. It'll take me a little bit to prepare, time to do it. And I was like, so, $50 an hour sounds like a good rate. And then that went well, and then other people, and it went there, and I love it. And I was recently in my class, we do a daily motivation, and I love just having 2 or 3 minutes to just talk, almost, at the kids. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, and then have them reflect on what I say, and I really get energized by it.
I love it. We have very similar speaking routes. I started off at a conference and was asked how much I charge and charged the exact same number you just said.
Good. It's a great number. Yeah.
And I was like, it's gas money, like it'll
Mm-hmm.
get me there and get me home. So for me, like, and I'm sure you'd identify with this. There's just no replicating the feeling of connecting with I'll say a human, but in this case, a student, on a different level that's more vulnerable, that you actually, call it a home run keynote, and have that, and then they want to connect after. And then to your point, like, can you come to my school? That was really
Right.
cool. I don't know if you were similar in this way. I really wrote a talk, 10 years ago, thinking I would do it just once, and not really do, like, I didn't really necessarily consider having that be like a thing I chased, if you will. And then it just became a thing after students asked me to come, more to their schools. Did you anticipate this being a long time thing, or were you kind of like, let's just see how this goes, and if something happens, something happens?
Yeah, and I think I just really enjoyed doing it, and I was like,
Mhm.
this is fun, and I had like this long-term plan. I didn't want to leave teaching. I love what I do. I love, seeing the same kids every day over the course of the year, and kind of, building a team, so to speak. But I do think about the future, and in retirement from teaching, doing it more. And even if it's little workshops, or, sometimes I love the keynotes, but sometimes I love just having a group of 20 where
Yeah,
you
like a
can do some,
breakout.
yeah,
Yeah.
team building exercises, and you can really start to see, here's what we're talking about. And then you hit them with an activity, and they're like, wow, this is how this comes together.
Mhm.
That's when the light bulb goes on, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Did you start seeing, as you were speaking and teaching in conjunction with that, was some of your speaking influencing the way that you were going in the classroom? Did you get like more excited to get there because you felt like that was, a different group, or you know what I mean? Did any of those things kind of coincide, or was it two very separate parts of your life that you're okay keeping them together, separate?
It was two separate things until really the last 2 years with the leadership class. I
Mhm.
didn't want to come across as preachy,
Yeah.
and I really wrestled with, because there's content that I have to get through, and getting through content is very different than a motivational speech. But
Right.
then I felt the energy when I would say certain things, or kids would ask questions, and I would drop some quotes on them, or things, from my speaking realm. And that's when I decided we're going to do a daily motivation. We're going to do
Mm.
something,
Yep.
and that's just what really gets us going. And then it's, then there's a question, the kids get up and they move around the room and they reflect on that. And I'm trying to have just a really open dialogue, and almost teach it like a life coaching course for the students, where I'm willing to answer any and all questions that they have.
Totally, totally. It's funny. Oftentimes, like, I'll be on, like a pod or whatever, like whatever I'm doing, and someone asks me a question that relates to a section of my keynote, and it almost becomes like I get into keynote mode. Like your mind, like
Yeah.
I've practiced it so much, I've done it so much, where I'm just like,
Right.
and here's that version, and I find myself getting into like this mode. Do you ever find yourself doing that? Like, a topic comes up and you're suddenly like, oh, I'm in character, not in character, but in the way of
Yeah.
like that's the talk, and then I just kind of give that story, and I don't even realize I'm doing it. Like when that happens,
No. Yeah. It's so, yeah. There's things just I say, and I taught history for a long time, and you could throw out dates, and you're like, when did I just figure out, when did I really know that date? And so the same thing for speaking. And I watched a lot of stand up comedy, and early on, I would go to clubs, and I would go to shows, and I remember I saw that Daniel Tosh early on, and
Oh
I don't know
yeah,
if you know him, yeah.
for
Oh
sure.
yeah.
And I watched everything that he did, and we saw him with 25 people at this place in Schaumburg, and he signed autographs for us. He was great, and he did this bit about the Olympics and how he thought they should allow steroids in the Olympics and allow steroids in the NFL. And it was offbeat; it never showed up anywhere. And then he finally got to Leno, And Leno prompted him with that question, like, "Oh yeah, I heard you said something about," and he did the bit. And I was like, wow, he got 3 minutes on Leno, but now he's getting another five. And he's just doing bit by bit by bit. So I think that's when it clicked for me, like, you are in character, you are doing bits. And
Mhm.
it carries more weight, hopefully, when you're a speaker than maybe a stand-up comedian for impacting people. But you're
Totally.
right on, Jim. It's cool when that clicks and people are like, wow, you seem like you're really prepared for that statement.
Right. Yeah, I've done it a
Sure.
million times in front of a brick wall by myself. So yes.
Yeah,
I was
right.
I was gonna try and reach, but down here there is definitely a Daniel Tosh stand-up CD
Oh
behind
yeah.
me
Oh,
immediately.
0. Remember on Comedy Central? That
Yes.
was
yeah.
the jam, man. I just watched that all the time in high school. That was
Yeah, that was
awesome.
a that was
Yeah.
that was a good one. Yeah, so he was, yeah, and he
So,
was a super nice guy when we met. It was,
That's great.
um,
mhm. So as you're developing these things and you're watching them, do you ever kind of feel like you had I guess maybe a test audience in the sense of having the classroom there that, if you're thinking of something or an idea comes to mind for something that you might want to put into a talk, maybe kind of finding a way to, like you said, like work it into like how Tosh works it into, the Tonight Show. You were able to
yeah,
work it into like something in your class that as you're talking, you're kind of like, well, this could be something here. Like, are these kids going to be engaged with that?
definitely, and that's why I'm so fortunate. I when I got into life coaching and speaking, and I've done some corporate stuff, and I've done life coaching with other people, but really the niche is this, I don't know, 15 to 22-year-old group, and that's what makes it work. Like, and Jim, you probably have this too. You go to a school and you give a great keynote, and maybe there's never going to be any follow up with it
Right.
because they don't have the requisite tools. And this leadership through service class, we do it every day. This isn't like I'm going to speak at a high school and they meet quarterly with their leadership group, and we'll have an impactful day. It'll be good, but there's just nothing about the day to day. So, now I teach 5 sections of a leadership class, and I feel bad for my first 2 sections because I'm working through new material when I'm doing these daily motivations. And we're on block schedule. So I have 2, and then the next day I have the other 3. And by the time I get to the 5th class, it's so good because I've done it 5 times. So the test audience is there. And that's what I'm realizing is this is what I need to do more of with these groups of people. And when they're like, "Oh, you're so natural, like talking with kids," it's like that's what I do all day.
For sure.
And I don't know if it would. It doesn't come across as well when I'm talking to a room full of CEOs. Now, if there's a team. I did the W Hotel sales team, and it was a lot of people that were 22 to 26. That hit, but this is the test audience, and it's working. It's working well. I'm loving it.
Yeah, and I would argue that you probably have the toughest of test audiences, like you said, because these kids have devices now and have that available, and
Yeah.
can easily check out, right? Like,
Right.
so
Yeah.
is it hard to, I guess for both of the speakers that are on this on the show today, for both of you guys, is it hard to, do you find like over the years that it's gotten harder to connect with kids because maybe necessarily, they can be immediately gone and
Yeah,
in a whole other world?
it's a good question, Joe. I want to hear your perspective on this too. I've always found um, it's not that hard, and the reason why is students always relate to someone who's being authentic, and I think they can
Hmm.
catch when you're not. And
Yeah.
so when I go up in the first 5 minutes, like I'm like losing my mind. I'm doing the wave. I'm doing all. It's just fun, and then I get them kind of zoned in. So I purposely do those types of things to not let them get like quote unquote bored. And when I sense that they are, I stop what I'm doing, get them back up and moving around. And so what I found is like they're able to pretty much connect and go. Now, all that said, in a room of 1,000, some of them will not be paying attention. There's nothing I can do
Yeah.
about that. So like, sure, that's going to be fine. But others that really want to be there are going to go, are going to do it. So I haven't necessarily seen a change in 10 years of that. It's just because that's my style, and it's kind of worked for that population. But Joe,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that in terms of getting students engaged when you're speaking?
Yeah. I was going to say the exact same thing. Authenticity is that they know that you're real. And, it's kind of sometimes I'll start with a humorous story. Sometimes I start with like a deep, sad story, depending on what keynote I'm giving.
Hmm.
I think it also depends if you're doing a high school and there's 2,000 kids, you're obviously going to have some kids checked out because they don't want to be there. If you're at a leadership conference which has 20 kids from 20 different high schools, I mean, that's a real energy in the room. You got 400 people who just want to learn and they're hanging on your every word.
Yeah.
And I think the most fun after, because of the authenticity of, kids that come up, and we just had a couple speakers in my classroom, and they came in and they talked about kind of like battles with addiction, and there was a girl that came up to him and she's like, my brother is going through like what you were going through, what your brother went through. And they just had a moment, and they just supported her, and were there. It was so great to have that. So the authenticity comes through versus the person who's just cashing it in and showing up and just going through the same material without having
For
a feeling
sure.
behind it.
In
Mhm.
fairness, if someone was doing that, I wouldn't be paying attention. And I'm 34 and I'm
Right.
not 16. Like
Yeah.
we all know what boring looks like, or we know what
Right.
what it looks like, and when someone's really not into it. And it does. I have met speakers over the years that are not in it for a passion and really in it to like perhaps for different reasons. And you could tell. You could just tell the ones who are like not want to
Yeah.
grow, want to get better, and there's nothing wrong with that. I won't judge that, but it's just a thing. Like you can totally tell. So
Yeah.
I'm with you, and I do think that students now more than ever are craving someone they can relate to. That's really what it comes
Right.
down to. And frankly, I don't look like every student I speak to, nor should I. But it's the story and the relatability of like a background of what you've gone through, those types of things,
Right.
and like curves and edges and what whatnot. But that's the most fun part of it. And then if you feel like I don't know about you, Joe, but I've had times where I've come out and I'm like, I'm not. This crowd is just not gonna. I could tell. Like I could tell
Yeah.
that they're just not
Oh,
going to be the one. And but you got to work through it. Like I spoke probably the worst one I ever gave was last year in Minnesota. I was speaking to an all freshman class that was at the end of their day and just not like no matter what I did, not
Oh,
having it.
yeah.
And I powered through this thing, man. I was so tired when I was done because I was overexerting, like I was overcompensating, if you will, my energy to
Yeah.
and get him in and I wanted to go home so badly when I was done. I was
Yeah.
like, I was sweating. I couldn't even think. I remember getting to the airport and I was like, I just like put my head down, where I was at. I'm like, I got to go home. But it happens. And to your point, the students that want to be there are the ones, represent their school is way more fun. And
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of find that the crowds where you belong. I think that's
Right.
always good too. So to shift gears a little bit, Joe, talk to us about, the last 2 years and why you've sort of seen this need for this leadership development that you've created within your class. What was the support like to do that? How did you do it? And what's the journey been like for you and your students?
So the the story I always tell, it really started in 2013, and
Mm,
I'll tell the fast forward version. But there was a young man. There was a young man in my class who was struggling, and I didn't know he was struggling. He was just a kid that was just loud and gregarious and obnoxious and annoying, and he would admit it to this day. And it really wasn't good at school, and we got along and we went back and forth. And then one day he walked talking to class. I said, "Hey, how's it going?" And he's like, "Screw you, man. You're fake. You're phony." Just went on this berating of me and walked into class. I was like, what the heck? And I called him out, got the class settled down, ran him out, and he continued to berate me. And it's like kid's like 6'2", 220, and he leans up against the wall, slides down, and just breaks down in tears. And he's like, "I'm sorry." He's like, I don't hate you. The things that you talk about in this class and the book that you wrote, it changed me. And he said, I've been a heroin addict and an alcoholic, and I'm getting sober, and today was really hard, and I tend to want to push away the people that want to help me.
mm,
And what he didn't know was 2 weeks prior to that, I had lost my brother, who died, after a battle with alcoholism. And my brother was just like this kid, like a loud and you know annoying, not really good at school. He was an elevator constructor. This kid Joe was a car mechanic, and I just thought in that moment, like why didn't someone get to my brother like I got to this kid?
mhm.
And so in that moment, I was like, we got to do something. And in the public school, you can't just say like, well, let's just make a SEL class. Let's
right.
call it a leadership class. And we had something in the past, and the principal had pulled the plug on it. It was a different principal, and she just said, "There's like, what's the curriculum? You're doing all this service, but what are the kids learning?" And so there was something on the books, and we got a new principal, and I went to him and I proposed this idea, and just from that, we just started like leadership is influence. We took the John Maxwell definition, and then I just like that was the center circle, that was the why. And then we build everything around it, from team building, communication, priorities, all of that stuff. And, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. We were using John Maxwell's 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, and we'd read a chapter, we'd talk about it. There were 31 kids in the class, and that's still kind of the framework of the course. But now we have 130 kids in the program,
Wow.
and we just we just go deeper and deeper and deeper. And in the first couple of weeks, I always ask the kids to do a reflection. They're like, we had no idea this was going to be it. We didn't know it was going to be motivation. We didn't know it was going to be so much thinking. And they're like, it's an easy class. It's really hard because the coursework is not challenging. They're reading and discussing stuff like that, but the depth at which they take it is really, really meaningful. And so that was
That's
kind of the
awesome.
muse for getting it going. And I just and even in this class, you have the 130 kids that are leaders, and you think, oh, these kids are so well put together, and you've got the captain of the volleyball team and the quarterback of the football team, and they're hurting just as much from whatever. And it just, you have no idea. I went to a musical, and one of the leads, her dad is pretty severely disabled. I had no idea. It's like super sweet kid, never has a bad day, leads the musical, and you're like, wow, like there's a lot going on behind the closed doors that we have no idea about. And so I
Hmm.
want to give kids an opportunity to talk about that, to share their thoughts, their ideas, and be that authentic person who's like, hey, this is how I get through it, and this is how I can help you, and hopefully we can grow together.
Yeah,
That's
that's
amazing.
amazing.
Well, how long, like, that's a level of vulnerability that's difficult for students to get to. How long do you feel like it takes for them to start accepting sort of this class and the environment that you've made out? Is it a week? Is it a couple weeks? So when do you feel like it starts clicking? And maybe it's different per student, of course, but what's it been like? Has that taken a little while? We were like, oh, I hope they get it.
Yeah. So I go deep really
Yeah.
early, and I tell the whole story of my brother, and there's more
Mhm.
to it. My dad passed away that year. 3 months before my brother passed away, I had a newborn son. Like, there was just a
Mhm.
lot, and I was in it. And so I kind of talk about, my family's struggles with addiction and that sort of stuff. And I think right away that clicks because somebody is like, that's my dad, that's my uncle, that's my grandma, that's somebody we know that he's talking about.
Mhm.
And so I kind of try, very early on, like we change their physical state. So they're up, they're moving around, they're hitting a volleyball every day. So we're up, and then we're like, there's an emotional attachment to the physicality. And then we hit them with something like deep, and they're like, whoa, it hits their central nervous system. And now they're willing to trust me. And so early on, I have one-on-one meetings with all the kids, and we have, some questions we go through. It's some, it's what's your favorite food? What's your favorite place to go for lunch? What are you hoping to get out of the class? And then, what do you need me to know about you that's going to help you
Mhm.
learn? And I think when I have those one-on-one conversations, the kids are like, okay, he just told us everything.
Yeah.
He's willing to get vulnerable. I'm willing to say that, hey, you know what, I have a little bit of a learning disability. Hey, you know what, I need to sit closer to the board because my eyesight isn't that good, or
Mhm.
whatever it is, whatever the thing that's weighing them down, they're willing to open up. And then some kids, it's the last day of school, and they're like, thank you. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't see it. And I mean, I know the kids right now that they're starting to turn, and you can see there were groups, all five kids hung together, and now two are starting to pull away because they want to go a little bit deeper with what we're talking about.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think you're doing those questionnaires and things like that. You're asking the questions one that they don't get asked probably, which
Mhm.
is probably what helps too. And I think
Yeah.
too, just completely, I'm hypothesizing here because I really don't have too many people of that age around me in my circles right now, but I'm sure that there's a good portion that are just looking for something to feel accepted like that
Yeah.
because they have so much, not to again kind of demonize like phones and social media and all that, but they have so much of that is the opposite, right? That is like, oh, I'm good.
Mhm.
Everybody on my phone is perfect. Everyone on my phone is
Right.
beautiful, and they don't think that they are because of that, because they're not that person
Yeah.
that's on Instagram or they're not that person that's in their TikTok feed, right? Like, so you're asking those questions off the top is kind of like opening that door right away to be like, okay, this is who we really are in the real world. Let's talk
Mhm.
about it. which is
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
I think, incredibly commendable. So I
Yeah.
guess, I mean, that's amazing to see, coming from an educator standpoint, coming from a leadership standpoint too. And I think that unlocks something with them too, I would assume,
And so,
like,
like
Yeah.
I'm thinking from like an administration perspective, for your school. So, like, this is a no-brainer of a class, right? Like,
Right.
I would be all in. Like, this sounds amazing. How do you measure success for this? So, like, I'm sure you have to report back on something or this class being a thing. What does that look like for you that a student is successful as a result of being part of this program?
So there's a service component to our class,
Hmm.
and they, we collected just at our school alone, we collected 5,000 boxes of cereal this year for the township food pantry.
Awesome.
Um, we just collected 30 pints of blood in our blood drive. So our principal is, he's a social studies guy, and he just knows it's good for the community.
Hmm.
And I think when we get, positive regard that things are happening from the
That's a good
community,
thing.
that's a success.
Yeah.
And he, like, it looks good. But for me is at the very beginning of class, the kids, I require them to write, like, hey, assume that your senior year is, you could summarize it in 2 or 3 sentences. I want you to write those sentences now. And then we're going to meet on the last day of school or the last week of school. And I'm going to say, like, did you do it? Like,
Hmm.
is this a 10 out of 10? Is this a 4 out of 10? Did you miss? That's what I'm looking for. How did the things we taught them, about priorities, about conflict resolution, about communication, how did they get better at those things over the
Hmm.
course of time? And so, yeah, there is no tangible thing. It's really just, did I draw this kid out to be a little bit more outgoing? Did we hit all of our number of service hours?
Yeah.
That's what matters.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of students that want to take this class, and there's a line at the door, to have, and
Yeah.
when we start creating that environment and that culture shifts a little bit within the school. That's when you really see, vulnerability is a really big step for acceptance
Yeah.
among students, and you're creating that, which is unique, and I'm not aware of any other programs. I work with a lot of educators that do this. I think it's really cool, and hopefully can kind of be a stepping stone for other schools to perhaps have one of their own. Or have you thought about growing this, or where does that go into as well?
Yeah. So I mean, it's on the books that everywhere in District 214, I think people are just maybe not willing to pull the trigger on the
Sure.
FTEs to put the teachers in the
Yeah.
room. You have
Yeah.
to find the right person. What does that look like for schools? We have some really high achieving academic schools. So are they going to pull kids out of AP Chem because they're going to take this leadership class?
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's the most important thing. I mean, like in Illinois, we've cut personal finance down to one quarter. We call it consumer education. And
Hmm.
it's like we have a $1 trillion college debt crisis, and yet we're deciding that our kids should take a quarter and call it consumer education. Like, let's teach kids to consume more. And maybe that's not the right
Yeah.
yeah,
thing.
Something
So
about this doesn't fit. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, that really is the plan. And working with organizations like the Human Performance Project, I do some leadership training with a local soccer organization. I do want to see these things grow, and that's something I'm working on with a team of some people. We're building a YouTube channel. We've got this education idea, and we'd like to get it into more schools, and just be a resource. And that I think
Yeah.
that's the dream for me, is when I retire to have a school in California, North Carolina, wherever, that's like, hey, we want this program. Cool. I'll be out there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I'll fly out the Friday before, spend the weekend, and still can be in this cool setting with people.
That's
that's
perfect.
very cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Joe, tell us a little bit about the coaching that you're doing, and what you've built up there, and then we'll round this out with a couple last
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah. So the coaching is, life coaching. I did some life coaching certifications with the
Mhm.
John Maxwell team. I did a health coaching certification with IIN. And I love the one-on-one. And
Mhm.
I did it really for myself first. I was like, if I can go through this process, I'm going to achieve more. So many things went right into the curriculum, so it was well worth the certifications. But then, like, again, I was doing this for students. I was now asking better questions, and then I got connected with a friend of a former student, and we were talking, and I thought I was just answering some questions, and she's like, well, "Would you coach me?" the same thing with the speaking. And she's like, what do you charge? And you're like, here we go again, now I got to figure this out. And I think that alone, it's amazing how just having a person want you to do something gives evidence that you can do it. Like that
Yeah.
kid telling me like you should speak, and then so now I'm coaching, and I don't think this person knows that she was my first client. Like she thought I'd been doing this forever. Like I was a life coach forever, but I didn't have any clients, paid clients, other than my students. And then that just kind of grew, and I started putting stuff out on LinkedIn, and now I've got some other feelers out there and connected with a lot of people. But it's really impactful, and coaching is different than therapy in that if we can get done, if we can solve your problem in one session, that's what I want. We don't
Yeah.
need to book 10 sessions and have you keep coming back. I want you to have a goal, and I want to give you the systems to be able to succeed. And a lot of times it takes more than that, because there's a deeper underlying issue of why they're struggling in the first place, and we get through all those things.
Excellent.
For sure.
Excellent.
So, where's the best place to get in touch with kind of what you're doing and find out a little bit more? Of course, you've got the website, but
Yeah.
are you on social media? Are you trying to push further that way too?
So most of the time I hang out on Instagram at Coach Joe Bush. I'm taking a little break right now because I'm writing another book, and I just need less distractions. So I actually put out posts for the next 5 weeks that I post every Sunday, just saying I'm taking a break. Send me an email if you need anything. But we do have a web or a YouTube channel. It's Elevare, Elevare Education. We were going to be Elevate Education, and we registered in Ohio, and someone had taken that name like the day before. So then we just used the Latin or Greek, whatever, I think Latin. So Elevare Education, and we're still playing about that. We've grown the channel to 20,000 subscribers, but it was really
Oh, wow.
like we started with just kind of this community. There's a guy by the name of Sean Patrick, and he had this Just Call Dad podcast. So he's got clips up, I've got clips up. We got to tighten it up, and that's what we're working on right now. But you can see, I put out a life transformation series, which is like 7 episodes out there, and then I just did a 3-part series about connecting with young people and asking questions. So you could
That's
find that
very
on
cool.
the
That's very
Elevare
cool. And
Education.
I really honestly thought when you said that the title, I thought you were going to say we registered and we made a typo and then we just ran with it, because the G and the R, obviously I'm not
Do the
fluent in
thing, man.
Latin.
Do the thing.
So
Right, yeah.
yeah. So, well, that's awesome. Well, that is so cool to do this. Thank you for coming on the
Yeah,
show
thanks,
and
Joe.
being able to do this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Um,
thanks for having me, guys.
of
for
course.
sure. And of course, we are the Hustling Sideways podcast. Wherever you get your podcasts, you can go check out this one. So if you're listening for the first time or the 110 plus time, I forgot what number we are.
Call it that.
Thank you for doing that. And thank you for listening. We are also available on all of the social media as well. You can find us, we're the Hustling Sideways podcast on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, not Snapchat, TikTok, all of the things. We're in all of the places. So if you want to be a guest here on the show as well, you can send us an email. It is hustlingsideways@gmail.com. And Jim,
Keep on hustling.
see you next time.
Peace.